That is a hard follow. I should have known. I actually one of the program organizers, and putting myself after Ian Golding was shooting both my feet and hands. So, but I'll do the best I can. So, trying to continue now with the theme. Obviously, I'm not going to belabor the point. We are in the interesting times. It's not the fun time to be in. But what is a resilient business in this time? How can we navigate this storm and succeed? So Ogden has already introduced our two speakers, and thank you for that. It's sort of much easier for me. But just to repeat, Alfredo, thank you very much for coming. He is a CEO of Montenegro International, which has a really diverse portfolio, which I imagine is now exposed to very diverse challenges. So I think it's really interesting to hear about how you navigate that. And then, Mr. Spano, with your experience with human rights and rule of law and putting complex committees together and making decisions, but now going into the private side, advising businesses as well globally, you will have also views. So let's start with what is a resilient investment. And then we can talk about what are the barriers to that, how do we navigate challenges, what are the opportunities, and then how do you see your future strategy and the future strategy for the world. So resilience. It is also a replacement word for ESG. I work a lot with our US investors, and they don't want to hear about ESG or DE&I, but when I say resilience and efficiency, they can still talk about it. So how do you see that? What is resilient investment? What is a resilient business in your view?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. You know, for us, for our group, Montenegro is home, so we couldn't miss to be here. Today, in a resilient environment where we need to be of that tone, we are a global organization. We have activities that really today spans from Tokyo to Los Angeles, so 17 countries, different cultures, different religions, different way of forming businesses, different relationships, and it's not easy. The way we try to tackle it is by addressing formally 4 factors. One is technology, the other one is the human side, the other one is the environmental side, and the financial side. And to give you specific examples, you know, because business is different from politics dynamics, and it's different from anything that is, you know, these visionary leaders which really give us the way how to do it. But we need to be practical. And in order to be practical, the way we try to be resilient, like very simple, what we do in our group is we are focused on hospitality. We have many resorts around the world. We try to, on the human side, focus whatever is the investment with anything that has to do with the human capital, like staff housing, good environment for all our colleagues, feeling part of the brand, feeling part of the culture and the nature where they live, because they can be in the Maldives, like they can be in Brazil, or they can be in Milan. And they need to be connected with the environment with themselves. They need to feel good about this. We need to have another example that we do in terms of environmental. We have raised whatever are the investment in our development on everything that has to do with environment preservation and with landscaping. And this goes with the other points regarding on what it is to put it together, insertion in an environment and respecting it. And especially for us, because we deal with very sensitive areas like underdevelopment, could be, again, but the Maldives, Brazil, Costa Rica, it's extremely important to pay. So we have increased the spending sustainably in this. And the other one is technology. We have a good feeling about investing in sustainable technology. Sustainable technology, we have developed the last 4 years a patent on green wave and carbon fiber recycling, which sounds very strange, but it's very fun and it's very interesting because basically what it does takes whatever is the waste or a general waste in the absence of any burnout, any oxygen burning, any whatever toxic waste, and reconvert it into, like, just imagine a very gigantic microwave, and this microwave, what it does, regenerate either copper cathodes, either glass powder, or additive for fuels. Fuels, especially for aviation fuels, they are mandatory, so have a 25% component of environmental sustainable green additives for fuel, and that's something that all airlines in the world will be obliged to do it. So from a business perspective, we want to give you, a brief touch of what we base in terms of environmental conscious and sustainability. And this, we are sure that give us an edge in the long run.
Excellent. Robert, from your point of view?
I think it's important to begin by saying that if this conference had been held 8 to 10 weeks ago, I would have given a different answer. We are experiencing a transformative shift for the global business environment of massive proportions. And I think it's important for all the debate during this conference to realize that we are in a new world, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I'm not going to go into the details. Everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about. So resilient business, has historically different answers. If you would have asked the CEO in the 1970s, what is a resilient business? That's a business that can manage different geopolitical factors and ultimately hit the bottom line and make as much money for their shareholders as possible, with little or no concern about their placement in society. This has changed. Well, we thought it had changed after about 2010, historically a bit earlier, of course, with the advent of climate change. Alfredo mentioned one of the 4 factors are environmental factors in his business. We thought that had changed. The ESG revolution, especially in the European Union, had swept in, and we can talk a bit about that in a moment. What we've seen in the last 6 to 12 months, and I see it in my practice, is a radical shift, a retrogression in many ways. Because the ESG revolution has always ultimately been about values, about placement of business as part of society. That is what it's all about. And I really liked what Ian Golden said about businesses being a part of a solution, not being only reactive to solutions being created by others. So a resilient business for the future, it's a difficult one. It depends on whether you are betting on the business environment going back to the era of the bottom line as being the ultimate success metric for business, or whether you believe for the future that businesses should be a part of the solution so they can thrive. And I think for CEOs everywhere around the world, that's the value-based judgment they need to take in the months and years to come. Is globalization over? We'll see. A resilient business has to decide and assess and make an assessment for the future on how it's going to be placed in a potentially deglobalized environment, which is far more protectionist and far more populist. My advice to clients has been over the last 6 to 12 months, it's a bit like the President of Montenegro said. It's a bit strange that, a human rights lawyer is saying this to CEOs. Do not forsake your values. It's interesting that businesses and CEOs have become progenitors of social change. So they should not be overly reactionary to day-to-day turmoil when it comes to their long-term view. So resilient business is a value-based entity that keeps on going with an idea on how it wants to shape society.
Thank you. And you have touched on my next topic, which is regulations, changes. Obviously, we have an extreme deregulation and demolition of governance on one side, and a bit more measured approach of simplifying regulations maybe in the EU. But I spoke with UK government the other day, and they asked for my specific business, what do you need from us? I said, please don't change regulations every 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And they laughed. And it is the most difficult thing to ask from a politician. Don't change something every 5 minutes or at least every 5 years. What the business needs is certainty of what is coming next. And we have change of rules across the board. So, Alfredo, a difficult one for a global business again, it's all over the place. You work in different geographies. How do you then find what is your North Star, let's say? How do you react to regulations? Do you pick what is the most stringent one, or do you have Montenegro standard or UCB standard then you then apply regardless?
Difficult one. It's not easy. And linking what Robert was saying before, we strongly believe in globalization. We think that being resilient for our group is just massively expanded around the world. And why? Because cycles are different in terms of time and different in terms of area of the world where they happen. And regulation in the certain areas of the world responds differently to shocks. And for us, it's been really a protection. And again, I want to be specific, just from a business side perspective, what did it mean? When pandemic hit, the world stopped. We are in the hospitality business, so for us, it's a tragedy. People are not flying, people are not going to restaurants, people are not using banking services, to pay for whatever. So that was really a problem. What saved us? Saved us being at the same time in different places of the world. Dubai responded in an amazing way, and we just launched an asset there, and this really kept us in a way of, connecting with the local culture, being responsiveness, apply to the local supply. Same thing, we were in the Maldives and in Miami, which responded in a fantastic way. So for us, really, by luck, by decision, by God, whatever happened, but being really global saved us in that period. I mean, really saved us our balance sheet and gave us actually at the forefront, being resilient and global, to be approached and to have learned to go to the next stage of growth. Regulation are difficult. Regulation are something that you need to work with in the way of become, as Rob was saying, as part of the solution. How we did it, again, pragmatically. Instead of going to local consultant, local expert, which you needed in any case, we decided to build, from COVID onward, an internal service team in Montenegro which deals with regulation, rules, landscaping, patent, programs, area programs, permitting. Why? For two reasons. Reason number one, we strongly believe that human capital is the most expensive and precious component in any organization, and it's very difficult to replicate, being global. And we want to transfer the values of the balance sheet in the growth factor within the people that knows what means being in Montenegro. So they know that when we approach a resort construction in the Maldives, they know exactly what means being that kind of deliverable of an asset. Or otherwise it's a replica. And if we replicate locally with new consultants who are entangled in the regulation, they live the change of the regulation. First thing they say, oh, it will take forever. It will take forever, why it's impossible, or it's very difficult, or we require too much money, and there is that. So we thought that our response is to build knowledge, awareness, and values within the organization itself.
Fantastic. So find opportunity in difficulty and diversify.
Yes.
Fair enough. Robert, regulations. How should business react? It has been, I'm sure, a lot of attention has been given to Omnibus here because there is talk about obviously reducing the requirements from the companies. Should they now take the foot off the pedal, as it were, or should they continue as they were, or is there a third option?
Yeah, I have an extremely strong view on this, and that is, and you may think especially in the European Union, if you think about what is the ultimate aim of most ESG regulation, whether it's the CSRD reporting mechanism, the CSDDD human rights due diligence mechanisms, the EU AI Act regulating AI systems, product compliance regulation, it's all about limiting harm to individuals. It's basically human rights legislation. That's what it is. As a former human rights judge, my message to the politicians is, the more you regulate, the faster you regulate, the less certainty is created, the worse it is for human rights. It's a counterintuitive argument, but it's actually the argument. Because it is directed at businesses, and if businesses don't know what the heck they're supposed to do, and the regulator doesn't have the knowledge to be able to regulate, we're all worse off. So the deregularization emphasis that is ongoing now is, I think, a good thing. Streamlining regulations to the core, making businesses understand what they have to do, and instead of spending massive amounts of money talking to people like me and helping them along, is a good thing. So it's not about laissez-faire, it's not about businesses operating in a vacuum, but it's also not about extreme regulatory overreach. It is a balance. So I think the omnibus approach in the EU is a good thing. It will give Alfredo and businesses in this room more opportunity to really understand what they have to do. And by that, the equilibrium, I call it the globalized equilibrium of business and human rights. That equilibrium is not reached yet. And until we reach the equilibrium, everybody's worse off, both the businesses and the users and consumers. That's the environment that we're in now. Not wanting to compliment a particular administration across the pond necessarily in this room, I would say that the pressures imposed by the Trump administration when it comes to the EU's regulatory expansion, I think is a good thing. Now it's all a question of how far you go. So regulation is not per se a solution. It's all about balanced equilibrium. And that's what I would want to see come out of the omnibus developments. And I think businesses, again, to Alfredo's point, businesses should be a part of the solution. I've always said to my clients, don't be anti-regulation. That makes no sense. Anti-regulation is not a universe you're going to live in. Be pro-equilibrium. Be pro-balanced regulation. And that is what I think we're seeing more and more, and we're going to see more and more moving forward.
So silver linings of all of this mess is that Europe is making more rational decisions. That's good.
I actually do think that what had happened in the last 10 years was a bit of an exaggeration. I don't know how many people in there, you can raise your hands if you want, are dealing with CSRD issues, the ESRS data points. I mean, if you look at them, you go, what the bleep am I going to do here? Because it's so complicated. And if you ask questions about it and you ask interpretational questions, there is no one in the world that actually is sure about the answer. That cannot be a business environment that makes sense.
True, their whole team's just interpreting regulations. So, great, we're coming to a more positive note. I will give 30 seconds for each one of you. Alfredo, without divulging your investment strategy, what is the next thing? What is the next angle? And also, don't say AI, please.
No.
Something else. Something else. What is the interesting thing to invest in?
AI, I leave it to Universal Capital Bank. It's not fun. No, the strategy for us is really on the hospitality side, and especially on the consumer side. There has been really a strong focus on being conscious, and they perceive the environmental respect, social integration, rules and regulation respect as a selling point factor. And they appreciate this. We have a massive request of educated clients, young clients, who really pay a value in the way how your supply is managed, how environmentally conscious you are in hospitality, what is your carbon footprint, how much regenerative design you use, which is something that it would have never happened probably 25 years ago. Nobody would have really cared. Today is absolutely a must. So that's for us is a focus, especially when we do a greenfield project. And we really believe that with the green wave and this new technology, and we have a really, really strong, although you are transferring an OPEX to a CAPEX. If you can really transfer whatever is a cost, because cost on environmental maintenance in a way, was always part of the P&L, okay, I had to do it. I put it there, I keep my bottom line, it's safe, with my margin, I'm happy. But what we see with the transition, that if you can move the OPEX into a CAPEX, then you are really tapping a very, very large opportunity from cruise ships to marine sea preservation to industrial production, which led to the fact that banks today, or major banks, they have dedicated support financing and subsidies for this kind of investment. So from a business perspective, I've even if facilitation in access of funding, if I have even more conscious towards this. So for us, in the way we see in our business, and I appreciate the particularity of our Oasis, it's a win-win. That's what we're going to base on.
Fantastic.
Just a couple of points at the end, as we're over time. My role here is less going to be technical, but more high level. Point number one, I think the international business community need to realize we are at the cusp of a paradigm shift in the international trade order. Market capitalism in sort of the Reagan-esque view is also changing, and I think it has to change. In other words, businesses of the future will be, I think, quite radically differently oriented, and they have to be from what we're seeing today. So the rules, risks, and rewards paradigm for the future is going to be in a different political and social context. I didn't talk about AI because that's something we can talk about for a long time, but that's part of the equation. The other point that I would make, I think it is also ripe for us to try to destroy the dichotomy between business and the individual. It sounds strange, but businesses are where individuals also live their dreams. That's where people work, that's where people integrate. So businesses need to be social institutions more than they are today in many ways. And that would bring us to AI, because then we are in a post-AI world where the labor force and the way the workforce is going to be reoriented is probably on balance going to be the biggest social, political, and economic question of the future.
Thank you very much for making my life very easy. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.